Okay. Welcome once again, everyone, to this webinar, which will focus on the topic of fostering an entrepreneurial mindset in your classroom. Today's presenter is Paz Fernández de Vera. Paz, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing the name perfect Spanish pronunciation. Paz is a business and entrepreneurship teacher. She is an expert on training and career counseling in her school, where she's actually the head of this department, and she's an inspiration to us and to many other educators in Europe. Because she and her two of her colleagues, Elena and Isabel, have created have come up with this very interesting initiative called Selfie Entrepreneur, which started out as a blog where students could share their experience in interviewing an entrepreneur. So students were encouraged to go find an entrepreneur and interview him or her and share their interview and experience afterwards in this blog. And now this blog is a great success. Paz, I'm sure she will tell more about the initiative and how it started, but just to give you some numbers, since its launch in 2014-15, the blog now has had almost 200,000 visits, which is an impressive number, and they're increasing. So you'll learn more about this initiative in a few minutes. Paz will also talk about other very practical and engaging activities to boost the entrepreneurial mindset of your students. Some of them are the €5 challenge and the creative glasses challenge, and I'm sure you will be inspired by her really inspiring examples. Just a few words on the project that has facilitated this webinar. This is the I-LINC project, which is a project which aims to support the boosting of digital entrepreneurial skills in young people and students. And we try to do that especially through empowering educators and teachers. So this webinar is one of our activities in which we try to promote this topic further. So I think that's enough for my presentation. Paz, feel free to turn on your camera, and I hope you can navigate through the presentation and start. Yes, thank you.
Thank you to Ms. Lava for your introduction, and thank you all for attending this webinar. I'm starting with one question. Entrepreneurial mindset, what are we talking about? When I speak about the importance of entrepreneurial education, I have the impression that most people think that our role as teachers that teach entrepreneurial abilities is transforming our students in someone like him, transforming our students in executives that sets up lots of companies and build up an empire and are all the time dealing with figures and numbers. This is nice.
Sorry for interrupting you. It's just that we cannot see you. Maybe you're not sharing your.
Okay. Start sharing.
Yes.
Now?
Yes, perfect. We can see you. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, and can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. So I keep on talking. I was saying that most people think that our role as entrepreneurial teachers and entrepreneurship teachers would be transforming our students in people that sets up lots of companies and business and are dealing with lots of numbers and figures. This is nice, and this is a key competence. This is financial literacy, but it's not exactly what I am talking when I talk about entrepreneurship. I think that entrepreneurship is learning to turn ideas into real projects that bring social, financial, or cultural value. So it's a much wider concept than this. Recently, the European Union Science Hub has published the so-called the entrepreneurship competence. You have the link here. I'm not going to explain it in detail because I prefer to focus on the activities that I make in my classes to foster this kind of abilities. But you can see here some abilities that are important and that are part of the entrepreneurship competence. Ideas and opportunities, creativity, vision, ethical and sustainable thinking, and spotting opportunities, on resources, as financial and economic literacy, or mobilizing others, or mobilizing resources, and into action, planning and management, and taking the initiative, which is so important, and working with others. So, entrepreneurial competence is a key cross-curricular competence to enter the job market as an employee, self-employed, or to start up ventures. But the most important thing that I always tell my students is that it's a key competence for life, because it consists on transforming our ideas into action. So let's go for the ideas. Let's go for the ideas for the classroom. I'm not going to read it all. I'm going to show how I practice and I put in practice these ideas in my classroom. The first one will be looking at everyday places from a new angle. Okay, the first day of my classes, I welcome my students with a presentation that says, "Welcome, you have entered in a creative place. Be ready to open your mind, to learn, to experiment, to go out of the classroom, to think, to work hard, get fun, fail, and succeed." And I want them to feel a different feeling from what they have been feeling the last year. So that's why I ask them to stand up on the tables in order to look at their classroom at an everyday place from a new angle. And I ask them, what do you see? And they discover things that they hadn't seen for the last year. They have been in the same classroom for the last year. And when I ask them, how do you feel, how it feels up there, sometimes I'm sat on the floor. They say, I feel empowered. And I say, keep this powerful feeling in your brain because you will need it to transform your ideas into action during this whole year. And I ask them to sit on the floor and I remind them to not make people feel like this. And I ask them to look outside. I ask, and I give them a post-it and I ask them to write what they are seeing. And then we make a second try and I ask them to write needs and solutions and business opportunities outside. And then we go outside and we write and we discover that we can look in another way. So they should be ready to work outside because we work outside lots of times. And sometimes our lessons are outside. Okay, discovering new resources. Last year we have started to paint on the windows. Here we are working visual thinking on the windows. And it's a quite simple idea, but a very motivating idea for my students. They were so happy to write on the windows with these new pens. And let's start with the second activity, the Creative Glasses Challenge. I created this activity 2 years ago, and I find it very useful to work all that kind of abilities in the classroom. You have the link here with explanation. The challenge is so easy. Let's make a pair of creative glasses that we will use during the rest of the year, that will remind us the importance of seeing beyond the obvious, observing from different perspectives, learning to detect problems and seek solutions, being aware of the fact that creative thinking can be improved by learning the proper techniques and practicing every day, and that it should be a habit. They can go out of the classroom, they can do whatever they want. They have 20 minutes, and sometimes we use music because it normally inspires them. Resources, a sheet of rubber-like material, and they don't have scissors outside. Can they use it? Yes, they can use it if they have scissors. From my experience, normally just a few students complete the task on time. Those who didn't finish are asked to bring the pair of glasses for the next session. And then we analyze the process and we make conclusions. The question is, what has happened here? And the conclusions are so interesting. Ideas are important, but they are useless if we don't know how to manage them. Being resourceful is essential to succeed. We can't just give up because we don't have any scissors. Time management is important also. Sometimes we do not realize that the solution is nearby. I kept lots of scissors in my bag, and in general, none of my students asked me if I had any. It gets lots of ideas to get a brilliant one, and students can improve their creative thinking. Then we speak about the added value. Does your pair of glasses add value to you? What kind of value? Is it a social value, a personal value, a financial value? It's a quite interesting idea, and when I ask them to write it, I get absolutely surprised, and it's amazing. They speak about what is the added value of their glasses, and it's absolutely inspiring sometimes. And it's important to generate ideas, but it's essential to learn to communicate our ideas and our added value. And here, he's one of my students, and he was explaining that, I don't know if you can, I'm going to thumb. He was explaining his glasses, and he said that the added value of these glasses was that they put him in the mood, in the same mood that they have had when he did the most important thing for him, which is playing the guitar. So the shape of the glasses are a guitar, and I found it absolutely inspiring and amazing. Okay. I don't know how to put it. Well, okay. Then I ask my students to explain what they have learned. Okay. There's a problem with the thumb.
Paz,
better.
I try
Yeah?
to adjust
Okay,
it.
thank you.
No problem.
I think that it was 88. I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll try some. Okay, let's see if it's working now. No. We can leave it to 75
Okay, we
now
can
and
leave
you
it.
just
Okay,
yes.
no problem.
Okay. Yeah.
So I asked them to explain what they have learned in a visual way, and it's a quite interesting idea also because they should learn from the process, from the activity. And we organize a contest. They upload their glasses and the added value sometimes to a Padlet, and we vote, and there is a winner. And our pair of glasses will be present during the rest of challenges of the year as a visual anchor to what they have learned. Sometimes when we are working, I write on the blackboard, be present. Your glasses should be present here. And let's go with the next activity. This week's item. This is an original idea of Paz Fernández de Vera. It's a quite simple idea and a very useful idea to work lateral thinking. She has published the results of this idea in RetoLab. RetoLab is a collaborative project that publishes challenges, entrepreneurial challenges, and it's a very interesting web. I collaborate with them, and I have published some of my challenges there. You have the link here, and I highly recommend to read the web, and you have lots of activities here. You have all the links, all the hands are linked, so you have the links to Charo's Twitter and RetoLab. So this week's item, every week, one student is in charge of choosing a new item, printing this sheet of paper, and putting an example of a different use for that item. In this case, the use could be a slide for a toy. And he or she is in charge of printing and pinning it on the board. And every classmate writes here different uses for the same item. It's a very useful activity to generate the habit of thinking in another way, thinking out of the box. And let's go with the next activity. The next activity is looking at my school from an entrepreneur's perspective. This activity is amazing. It's created by Elena Rodriguez Jimenez, and she has published it in RetoLab also, and it's published in EntreLearn Toolkit. You have the links here and here. And it's a very nice idea. Elena puts different QR codes in the school, and the students go with the mobile reading the QR codes and seeking needs and trying to propose solutions. And it's a very good activity to start the year. And another activity is Selfie Emprendedor. Tomislava has told about Selfie Emprendedor. What is Selfie Emprendedor? Selfie Emprendedor is a collaborative project that has its origin in an entrepreneurial teachers community in Google Plus, created by Pablo Peñalver. Pablo Peñalver is an expert in one of the Spanish references in entrepreneurship education. And Elena, Isabel, and me decided to create the blog. And nowadays we are a community of 50 teachers. We have had lots of visits and selfies in our page, and the idea is, and the objective of the idea is quite simple. It's learning from real entrepreneurs' experiences. It's easy. We make our students to go outside to to work in a real context and to know the entrepreneurs and to learn from the entrepreneurs that they have in their town, in their city, because most of the business are small business like this, and we have lots of things to learn from them. And the questions of the interview are so easy. Sometimes they decide that they ask much more questions than this. It's up to them. They can choose. How did you decide to become an entrepreneur? What are the advantages of working as an entrepreneur? What do you like about your job? What skills do you need to become an entrepreneur, or any advice? The formats of the self-entrepreneur have been changing. And last year I was working with my secondary level students, and we decided to record a television show, a television selfie. And here's Jerai speaking about his selfie emprendedor. It was a very nice experience. We recorded it with a promo, with Touchcast, this program. It's so easy to work with. Another format, video format, is Sofia interviewing a business woman in her town. Even some students, as Pablo's students, made a research about the profile of their region. You have the link here. It's quite interesting. Even we have posters with Gloucester and different formats. And Elena, Isabel, and me wanted to go further and wanted to make visible some things that we consider interesting to share in our blog. So that's why we decided to create the Helping Others selfie. What is this? In this page, which is in Self-Emprendedor webpage, we allow our students to share how they help others with the benefits of their entrepreneurial projects. My students, for instance, give their benefits of all their business projects to help someone. So we thought that it was a very good idea to share it here and to give ideas to others. And we have another kind of selfie, inspiring stories selfie, and learning from failure selfie. Some students make interviews to people that has failed, and we can learn from that kind of failures. And in the last year we have a fantastic opportunity, because I-LINC contacted with us, and they decided to organize a self-entrepreneur competition to scale selfie up to a European level. So it was fantastic, because it's a very good opportunity to share selfies and interviews with the rest of teachers and with the rest of the students in Europe. The new edition is from the 1st of September to the 31st of October. You have the link here, and I encourage you to participate. Okay, we go with the next activity. It could be a poker match, but in fact is the result of an activity in the classroom. The activity is the five. Wait, what happens here? Okay. No. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
I have a problem with the presentation.
I have a problem. Okay, I have a problem with the screen.
Is it stuck?
Oh, now. Okay,
Do you want me to move the slides for you?
No, now. Okay, the €5 challenge. Okay, here. What is the €5 challenge? The €5 challenge is an activity that consists on our students have to think ideas, creative ideas to generate or to get benefit with €5. And they have to think how to get the €5 also. And it's based on an original activity of Tina Silic of the Stanford University. And I have been working with this activity for a long time. And it's a very, very nice activity for the classroom. You get absolutely surprised. The last year, my students, secondary students, organized a magic show. They didn't know anything about magic. They learned the tricks on the internet. They organized the advertisements. They organized or they designed the tickets. They sold the tickets and they organized the show. And it was fantastic. I was so proud of them. Okay. Okay, you have here some samples of the €5 challenge. You have the link here, and you can check it if you want. My students of other years. And this year we are going to launch a €5 challenge with I-LINC. You have the link here with all the information, and we are starting in October, and I encourage you to participate. I'm going to share the results of my students in this €5 challenge. And let's go with another activity. Emprend DIY project. I created this project to make my students to set up a business from scratch. So they work on the ideas with different techniques. They are working with his 6 thinking hats, and they develop different kind of projects. 2 years ago, they sold 170 captions in 2 days in Facebook. It was crazy, but it was amazing. I asked them to make a fan page in Facebook, and they say only to publish that they were going to sell in a market in the school. And the next day they say, we have sold 90 captions. And I say, it's impossible. We can't make 90 captions. We are not a factory. We are a school. Stop selling. And then they say, yes, we can. My grandma is going to help me. My friends are going to help me. And finally, we involve not all local community, but it was a lesson from my students. And the benefits went to a charity. We visited the charity, and it was amazing. This is another Emprend DIY project. In this case, they design some maps. Here they are designing and working on social nets and dealing with suppliers. Normally we made the transfers to the bank online, but I wanted them to do it in a bank. So we went to a bank, and they are scanning the invoice to send it to the suppliers in the streets. They make Facebook and Blogger and Twitter and web page, and the maps were these, and it was a successful project also. It is important to make our students' talent visible and to make them aware of the importance of communicating ideas. And this was last year. Mieres del Chapín, they designed some pins, and they wanted to sell it in a real context in the street. So they went to the town hall, they asked for the permission, they went to the police, they asked for the permission, and finally, on one Sunday, all the students went on time to sell, and they gave the benefits to a social institutionals. And last but not least, historias embotelladas. What is historias embotelladas? Historias embotelladas is in the frame of what we call Reto TMP, promoted by Banlalon. Banlalon is a public agency that promotes educational, entrepreneurship education here in my region in Asturias. I have been working with them for several years, and they bring to my class a real entrepreneur that propose my students a challenge. So the last year, Beatriz Rodriguez Alvarez, who is a product designer, came to my class and made the next proposal. She said, look for a place in the surroundings of your school that it's not used anymore and give it a new use. So we allow our students to go for 2 hours with the mobile to the street, and they discover this tunnel, which is 5 minutes from our school. The challenge was absolutely crazy. 21 meters by 2 meters and 40 high. No initial funds, and 4 weeks. And 4 hours a week in my class. They work much more than 4 hours a week. So they had to learn to sell the idea in order to finance the project. The idea was the next one. The idea was to repair the tunnel and to make it and to transform the tunnel in the basis of a cultural initiative called Historias Embotelladas, like message in a bottle. They wanted to recover the messages, the handwriting test and the letters, and they made a crowdfunding on the internet. We went to the television, we went to the radio, they went to sell to the streets, to the local business, they tried to sell the idea on the net, and finally they made it. And we started painting. The process was absolutely amazing. It was very funny and very enriching. And the result is we decided to allow every student to have to express themselves in the tunnel. And some of the creations are these, absolutely impressive. That's what happens when you give our students freedom to express themselves sometimes. So we organized an inauguration, and we started to get letters and to get stories in the tunnel. My secondary students were the responsible of getting these letters and uploading it to Facebook and the social nets in order to share them with the rest of the community. And we involve the local community. This is a meeting that was organized in May with all these groups that are involved. El Camino Association, Creative Writing Group, the Public Library, English Conversation Group, a poet. It's absolutely fantastic. We met here to read stories that we have got from the tunnel. And this association is one of our best allies, because they go every Wednesday to the tunnel and they leave what they call consejos embotellados, like piece of advices in a bottle. And in fact, my secondary students have created some batches for them because they have to roll and they are part of the project. And here my students are with Tino. Tino is 88 years old and he's a poet and he has been writing some poems for the tunnel, and it's an amazing project. So I will finish showing a picture that shows very nice what I call the shiny eyes project. And I will finish saying what I tell my students sometimes. It's a quote by Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it's done. So let's be aware of our students' talents. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Pat. I'm sure that you gave a lot of very useful tips and examples for our participants here. From the feedback that we get, I can already confirm this actually. There are a few questions that came up in the chat, but I would like to encourage the participants, in case you have any questions left, please share them now in the chat so that we can address them to Pat. You're receiving a lot of thank you messages for the great presentation that you did already. So let's start with the age of your students. Some of the participants were interested in the age of your students, and I would link this to another comment that we received that one participant says that she sees these activities more suitable for teenagers. Can you give more specific on the students that you have and whether all the activities that you suggested are?
Yeah, I have, okay, I have two different kind of students. I normally, most of my classes are with the vocational and education and training students. These students of the tunnel, for instance, are studying beauty. So they are teenagers or adults. But I also teach in a secondary level. They are 13 and 14 years old. And sometimes I organize the same activities. In fact, last year I was working with the 5 euros challenge and the creative classes, and so I think that it can be useful for teenagers or adult people. Even I know that in some primary schools here in Spain, they have been using the creative classes with primary with children. I don't know the results and I don't know how it works, but sometimes they write to me in Twitter and they say thanks because they are using the creative classes challenge. So that's all that I can say. I normally teach teenagers and
Okay,
adult
thank you.
people.
Of course, I think that we can be creative in adapting these resources and materials to our own students.
Yeah.
So if people have ideas on how to introduce these activities to primary education, feel free to develop it and to share it with all of us. One more practical,
Yeah.
let's say a question more on a practical side on how many lessons do you have with your students per week? I think that this stems from the impression that some of these projects are quite long term, let's say a whole semester, or it's a longer duration in the greater involvement of students. So how exactly do you organize it in practical terms? How often do you meet your students?
Yeah. And normally, with my vocational students, I have 4 hours a week, and it depends on the project. For instance, the project of the tunnel was crazy because it was only 4 weeks, but we were working with a WhatsApp group very hard and out of our class. Normally, we work in our classroom, and I have four hours with the vocational students and 2 hours with the secondary level students. And I try to adapt the activities to the time we have in the classroom.
Yeah, I'm sure these activities, they foster further engagement, so students don't really, they're not bothered if they have to even do this out of school, school time, I'm sure.
In the tunnel project, it was crazy. I remember one day we were at 11 at night writing, and I say it's so freaky. All the people go out from this group, go away, and let's have a rest. But they were so motivated, and it was in one hand it was fantastic.
It's nice to hear that this brings.
So this kind of activities and challenges.
Yes, sorry for interrupting.
No, this kind of activities and challenges are absolutely engaging for them because they have an emotional engaging. It's a key factor, the emotional engaging in the activity.
Yes, that's true. I have a few other questions coming in the chat. First, which subject do you teach, and in the context of which subjects do you introduce these activities? I think that some of the teachers are, since let's say entrepreneurship is not really embedded in the same way in the different countries and different systems, educational systems. So some teachers are curious to know whether you have an obligatory program from the Ministry of Education, or it's more within the school or within your own initiative.
I have an obligatory program, yes, but and I teach it in a subject called in Spanish it's like business and entrepreneurial initiative. So I would difference between business and entrepreneurial initiative, and these projects are for the part of entrepreneurial initiative. And about these things, I think that it's quite complicated to explain it in 5 minutes, but we should start for the beginning, because sometimes we start for the financial literacy. It's a proficiency level. So with the students whose level is not very high, you should start making them to be entrepreneurial in their personal life before than setting up a business, because they don't have the knowledge and they don't have the level to do that, and sometimes they don't have the vocation to set up a business. So the first day of my classes, I tell them that every ability that we are going to learn in my class will be very useful for their lives, working for others or working for themselves. And that's what I do. I understand that sometimes you have a compulsory program, but the tendency here at least in my region, is to work in this way. And my personal view of this kind of activity of subjects is this, because sometimes they need to start by this kind of abilities before having lots of financial literacy, because my students are going to be beauty technicians or hairdressers, so they are not financial experts. They have to know little concepts about financial literacy, which is important. It's important. It is, but yes, it's not all. I think that there are lot of most important abilities, more important abilities than financial literacy.
Yes, I think that we can talk about on this topic forever, because especially now within the a learning event that we're doing on entrepreneurial teaching across all subjects, we are trying to address this topic, and there are different ways to embed this type of teaching in school. It could be a separate project, or it could be a transversal across subjects, but it's always difficult because each of the, let's say, approaches has advantages and disadvantages. I suppose if you have a specific subject and program, then a teacher could be even more limited in the types of activities that they introduce, because, let's say, the curriculum focuses more on business skills. But at the same time, if teachers are not really obliged by any curriculum, they feel lost and they don't know where to start from. So it's always a very tricky question and difficult question to approach. But that's what we're doing by sharing this experience, trying to find our own ways. And I will. I just have a few more questions coming from the chat, and I would like to address them also, that no one feels discriminated. So there is one question from Nicoletta from Italy. She says that she teaches English at lower secondary school, and she's wondering how can she integrate these activities, or some of these activities that you shared in her classes, in her course. If you can give her some idea.
Yeah. She teaches law.
English at
law?
lower
English and law.
secondary. No,
Really?
just English. Yes.
At lower secondary. Oh, yeah. I don't know because I'm not an English teacher, but I think that these activities you can do it in English, or you can do it trying to yeah to do the creative classes with in English. I don't know exactly because I'm not an English teacher, but I think that it's not very difficult to do that. It's a transfer. I think that these kind of activities are absolutely useful for any subject or for any students, because they consist on turning your ideas into actions. I think that they would work with the €5 challenge in English, and try to make the presentations in English, or to work with the creative classes in English, or with this week's item in English. I don't know. I'm wondering.
Well, it's a challenge for Nicoletta. She can try to introduce this and maybe share her experience with us afterwards. We would be happy to hear from her.
Yeah, it's a good
One
idea.
last question. Of course, we have to tackle at one point the topic of assessment. So we have this question on how do you grade your students? Is it a continuous evaluation, or each activity represents a percentage of the final grade? Or if you could just give a bit more information on that.
Okay. Assessment for me is so important. In fact, I was working the last year with a team about assessment of this competence in Malnalon. It would take long time to speak about this important question. How I assess my students. So it depends on the project. Depending on the project, we have a kind of assessment or another. But in general, what I assess is a process. It's the final product, because normally we have a final product, but also the process. And I use rubrics. So I have different rubrics, and I created what I call the continuous improvement rubrics, because I consider that assessment is an instrument to improve every day. So we should make our students aware of the importance of the assessment, not as a result or as a number, but as a way to improve every day. So they have like like a rubric or rubric, I don't know how to say it in English, and every day with a system of colors that I have created, red, black, yellow, or green, they are filling the blanks about how they have been working in team, how has been the quality of their work that day, how they have been listening, how lots of important questions to assess. So they do that every day, and they assess their mates, their classmates, and I assess them, and they all assess to themselves. And I think that it's a complex question, but it's quite important. It's a key factor of the all the process, and I think that it should lead the rest of the process. We could be speaking about this important topic for a long time, but in general, with rubrics and making it as an important part of the process, not only the result, but also the process every day. It's an improving instrument.
There is one additional question from Nicoletta. Do you use e-portfolio to collect competence assessments? I'm not really aware of what that is. I don't know whether you are.
Yeah, a portfolio when they you mean a portfolio for the students, or what are you talking
That's
about
what she means.
when you
Yeah. Yes.
For the students? It should be great, but I don't use it. They have their own sheets of paper in in a physical way, and they have the colors and the sticks with the colors and the observations. We could call it a portfolio. It's a physical portfolio, not online portfolio, but it's like it's a reminding of the importance of the process and of how to work every day, and to try to do our best every day.
Thank you very much, Pat. I think that was a very nice ending also of the webinar. There's still comments and basically comments coming up in the chat. I can try to read one or two, but since we're approaching 6 o'clock already here, we would need to close the webinar soon. So any last questions? If there's someone that wishes to address a question to Pat, please write it in the chat now. Just one thing from Nicoletta. I just saw that she shared that they have two different evaluations for subject and competencies, unluckily. Yeah, unfortunately, it's difficult to have a universal type of assessment across all countries and all schools. So we have to deal with the system we have in the particular school. So I don't think we have any more questions. So I would like to thank everyone then for joining this webinar, and I would like to thank Pat especially for this great presentation and for the really inspiring examples that you gave. I'm sure that if people are interested, they will follow you on Twitter and on other social media channels. So I hope you won't be the amount of questions and contacts won't be overwhelming, but I think everyone benefits from this presentation and from this contact. And you can see in the chat that everyone is very appreciative of your presentation. So thank you very much. And just two practical points. We will, since we recorded this webinar, we will share it together with the presentation where you find all the very useful links that Pat added. We will share it in the entrepreneurial teachers community on I-LINC. They will be available from the 14th of September, so it would take us a few days to prepare everything, but you should be able to access the materials there after the 14th. So thank you very much. If you come up with any further questions, feel free to share them in the community or drop us an email, and we can forward this to Paz, or if necessary. I would also like to encourage those of you who are part of the learning event on e-twinning to continue following, because we will address and talk more about some of these activities that Paz mentioned in the following modules. So keep following and keep participating. And that's it from us. Thank you very much once again, and have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all. It has been a pleasure.
Bye.